We're going to share a few thoughts on what we've covered so far. If you've got a Bible, it'd be great if you could turn to John 11. There's a QR code up on the screen, I think, now for a Bible in your own language. You can scan that to select a Bible translation of your choice. So far this morning, we've had a number of different presentations telling the story of Lazarus from John 11. I'm going to go through those three parts and just bring out a few reflections as we go along. So firstly, do you remember all those minutes ago, we had the balloon puppet show, which introduced us to the character of Lazarus. And we have this puzzle, don't we? Jesus was aware of Lazarus being sick, but decided to stay away from coming to heal him. He told his disciples that he was fully aware that Lazarus had died. And in verse 15, he explained why he didn't come. For your sake, I'm glad I wasn't there, so that you may believe. Strange, isn't it? Jesus says he was glad he wasn't there to heal Lazarus. Now, it wasn't that he didn't care for his friend, as we saw from the video, but Jesus had a higher purpose in it all. He wanted to do a greater sign than a healing, to reveal more about who he is and why he came. In our Pictionary game earlier, we listed out the 7 signs in the Gospel of John. Lazarus' resurrection is the final one of these signs that points especially to what Jesus is come to earth to do. And in the last few verses of the chapter, the Jewish leaders are so enraged by what Jesus has done that they prepare to arrest Jesus. So the resurrection of Lazarus is a sign pointing forward to a greater and more permanent resurrection of Jesus Christ. At this point in John 11, we're probably only a couple of weeks away from Jesus' death on the cross. These events were shortly before the Passover festival, when Jesus would die. We're on the approach to Easter. And ironically, it's this final miracle that so outrages the authorities, bringing life to the body of Lazarus, is probably the last nail in the coffin for Jesus. In verse 53, it says this about the chief priests and the Pharisees. From that point forward, they plotted to take his life. So my first point is this: Jesus is purposeful. Everything he does has a reason. Looking at ourselves, we might find ourselves confused why Jesus doesn't bring healing or sort out difficult situations when we ask for it straight away. But Jesus has purpose in his timing. Let's trust him, even when we don't understand why he sometimes delays. So that was the first bit. Secondly, do you remember we watched the video clip from the Chosen TV series? And this scene showed the emotional encounter between Jesus and Martha, and then with Mary. And this fits with verses 17 to 37 of our chapter. And famously, this chapter includes the shortest verse in the Bible. Jesus wept. In English, just 9 letters, but truly a profound moment in human history. When Jesus came down to earth, he didn't just come as an observer. God became fully man. At the beginning of John's Gospel, it says this: the Word, Jesus, became flesh and made his dwelling among us. If we're ever in doubt about the love of God, remember this verse: Jesus wept. He didn't just shed the odd tear. This wasn't sad emoji, chin up Martha and Mary, let's look on the bright side. No, Lazarus was his friend too. Mary and Martha were his friends. Jesus was overcome with the pain of loss. I don't know if you saw the recent exchange in the Oval Office between Donald Trump and Vladimir Zelensky. It's quite painful to watch. But there's one point in the exchange where Trump says, "You don't have the cards right now." Actually, he keeps on saying that. So this is Donald Trump, the deal maker, thousands of miles away from Ukraine, saying he's got the upper hand. He's sort of flexing his muscles, doesn't seem that interested in the fact that people are dying in Europe. But then Zelensky says, he's the president of Ukraine, this country that's under attack. He says, I'm not playing cards. Do you remember him saying that? You can see it in his eyes. It's real, isn't it? This is no strategy game. Yeah, he's away from his country for a bit, but soon he'll be back in Ukraine under fire from his enemies. His people are dying every day. This isn't a game. I'm not playing cards. And this made me think a little bit about what God's like. Some people think of God like being a sort of all-powerful leader, someone who has all the cards, who just sort of toys with people's lives from afar. But no, Jesus, the God-man, came down to earth to be with us and amongst us. He knows what life is like here on earth. He knows that it's not a game. He knows this is deadly serious. Jesus came down and he experienced mortality and human suffering. He knows what it's like. So my second point is this: Jesus is caring. And so right now, are you struggling with life? Well, Jesus really gets it. He's been there. He knows so much of human loss and suffering from a personal point of view. Verse 33 in our passage says this: Jesus was deeply moved in spirit and troubled. Maybe you've recently suffered loss or illness, and you're wondering, where is God in all this? Or maybe you're struggling like Martha and Mary did. Well, it's okay to tell Jesus about how you're feeling, or why you're so confused if he doesn't seem to be answering your prayers. Know that Jesus really cares. And thirdly, this morning, we had our drama, the raising of Lazarus from the dead. Now, there's some things in life that can't be reversed. So when you inflate a balloon, sure, you can let the air out again, and then you can inflate it again. But when you pop the balloon, you can't unpop it, can you? When you crack an egg and make an omelette, you can't uncook it and put it back in the shell, can you? It can't be done. But Jesus said, Lazarus, come out. Jesus simply spoke these words from his mouth, and the death in Lazarus' body was reversed. Doctors can do amazing things today, but they can't do this. No one can bring a person back from death. Well, only Jesus. So my third point this morning is Jesus is powerful. So in our earlier game of Pictionary, we reviewed the 7 miraculous signs in John's Gospel. The raising of Lazarus was the greatest of these signs, the defeat of death. But a sign points to something greater than itself. If you read a sign saying, Mona Lisa, this way, you don't stand and stare at the sign, do you? You want to get in and look at the artwork. If you go to a famous restaurant, say the Fat Duck, you might pause in front of the sign to get a group photo, but really, you want to get inside and taste the food. And likewise, with this sign of Lazarus' resurrection, what's it pointing to? Well, the raising of Lazarus was amazing, but it was only temporary. Lazarus, sadly, was going to die again. And actually, if you just turn the page in your gospel to chapter 12, verse 10, the Jews start to plot to kill Lazarus again, because so many people start believing in Jesus on the basis of him coming back to life. They want to get rid of Lazarus. Poor old Lazarus. He's already facing death again. So, the death and the resurrection of Lazarus were pointing to Jesus' own death and resurrection, the most important events in human history. Let's review these events now. Let's go over here as we do this. So Jesus had purpose in dying on the cross. And I'm just going to invite Martha to come back up with me. As the perfect sacrificial lamb, Jesus was the only person who could pay the price for our sin. And Jesus cared so much for his people that he was willing to die in our place. He sacrificed his life in our place on the cross, and his body was laid in a tomb, much like Lazarus' tomb. That was on Good Friday. But on the third day, on Easter Sunday, Jesus showed his power once again. When one of the women went to the tomb that morning, she found that the stone had been rolled away. And when she looked inside, there was no body, only the strips of linen. The disciples encountered Jesus once more, risen from the dead. He had a new body, recognizably Jesus, but transformed. And this was a body that would ascend back to the Father. So Jesus has now ascended to the Father, but he's coming back one day to overcome death, and he offers to raise us up with him. So I'm going to invite you now to respond to these wonderful truths. In your folder, there should be like a strip of about 8 sticky labels. If you'd like to respond, I'm going to invite you to write your name on a label and come and attach it to this ribbon. You can respond now, or you can respond when we're singing our final song in a minute. So the band might want to get themselves ready to play now. And if we could have the words of the song up, we're going to sing the same song again. And you might want to respond to Jesus for dying for you on the cross. Is Jesus calling your name? You called my name, Jesus. Without Jesus, we're all heading to the grave without hope. But if we trust in Jesus, there's hope beyond the grave, a glorious day to come. We can be lifted up with him. If you'd like to indicate that Jesus is in charge of your life and you want to live in accordance with his purpose, then you're welcome to come and stick your name on the ribbon. Maybe you already follow Jesus, but you've got hard things going on in your life. You've been wondering if he really cares. Perhaps like Martha and Mary, you've got something difficult to bring to Jesus. If you'd like to bring that to Jesus this morning, you feel free to write it on a sticky label and come and let Jesus carry it with you. Or maybe you've got a new sense of Jesus' power this morning. You've been impressed with all that he has done and can do. He's the one who's defeated death. If you'd like to know more of Jesus' power in your life, then come and stick your name on Jesus. So if you'd like to do that, you're very welcome. I think Martha's going to bring the balloon into the middle, and you're welcome to come and stick your sticker onto the ribbon. I'm not sure how many stickers this one will hold, but Jesus is more powerful than this balloon. So feel free to respond, and we're gonna respond in song now. Mark's going to lead us in that.
Alrighty, if we could all stand.